Hey, I'm Matt Hudgens, and he's Dave Mulvaney, and this is Profitability MD. Dave, how you doing today, buddy?
Great, Matt. How about you?
I'm good. I'm not much of a winter fan. Snowing in Texas, cold and chilly in Atlanta, even chilly in Florida, I hear.
That's a sweater.
That's what they don't come out very often down there, do they?
Not very
No.
often. I have more
All right,
sweaters than I
episode
need.
113. Episode 113. What's your one thing? What's your one thing? All right, so there's this book called The One Thing by Gary Keller from Keller Williams, and some other, the co-writer is a guy named Jay, I'm going to butcher his name, Pappas or something.
Papasan, I think, is what it would be the pronunciation.
Okay.
Because it has an A. If not, it would be Papson, but it looks like Papasan. But
the book is called The One Thing.
Sorry, Jay, if you're watching the show, we can't pronounce your last name.
We're working on it. So anyway, I was listening to a podcast, and Jay was the one being interviewed, and I forget whose podcast this was, and he talks about the one thing and how to boil it down. But first, here's the one thing, how they phrase it. The one thing question is, what's the one thing that you can do such that by doing it, everything else is easier or unnecessary? Okay? So in our world, we're talking about the one thing you can do for your business such that everything else will be easier or unnecessary, right? So that's kind of how we're going to review it. And he boils it down to three simple steps, and we'll go through that as well. But so your one thing is, what's the one thing that if you do that, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? So we're trying to cut through the forest through the trees, right? A lot of times business owners stay busy doing the unnecessary stuff, the busy work. Remember, we've talked about the A, B, and C activities, and the A activities, A plus activities are your money-making stuff, and the C activities are the stuff that's just the, minutia, right?
So, it's funny. So I would imagine you go back 50 years, there's people at that time who said, man, if I just had this thing on my desk that would memorize all my documents, that was the one thing they needed, right? The computer, right? And then,
right.
And then if I just had this one thing I could carry with me that'd keep track of all my stuff and all my phone numbers and all my birthdays. And then we got that. And so you got to look at innovation is part of this, because when you look at the one thing, what you're really doing is you're looking at your actions critically, and you're saying, okay, we're doing all this stuff, but what's the one thing in all this stuff that we could do that'll make this wheel turn faster, or it'll make it turn easier? Like if a wheel was square, what's one thing we could do this wheel? We could shave the edges off, right? And it would still be square, but it would turn a little better. It's kind of that thought process. It's looking at what you're doing critically and find out what's necessary and what's not necessary. How are you going to make it go easier?
Yeah. And so there are a couple of things that come to mind when we talk about this. There's another guru that I follow called Sam Ovens, is his thing.
Sure.
So Sam Ovens. And so he's more about sales and sales processes and sales. And so one of his big things, the one thing would be, what have you done to generate a strategy session today, right? What have you done to get a prospect? What have you done to get a prospect on a phone call, right? So he calls them strategy sessions. So that's kind of his one thing, is what have you done to get a prospect on the phone, to set an appointment, right? So everything else revolves around that one thing, because the more prospects you get, then you have a closing ratio, which then generates a client, which generates revenue. Dan Sullivan has it, and he's talked about unique abilities and money-making activities. We've talked about A plus activities, but this was a great one, which was, what's the one thing you can do tomorrow if you can only do one thing tomorrow to make money, what would it be in your business, right? So depending on what type of business you have, for a lot of us, that answer is keep our existing clients happy, right? Because if you're in a recurring revenue model, keep that existing client happy, he's already paying me. If it's a recurring purchase model, keep them happy because they'll buy from me again in the future, right? So it depends on what your business is and what's your one thing. Could be meeting with prospects. I need to get in front of prospects in order to get clients. It could be I need to get in front of centers of influence who can send me prospects, right?
And I believe that the questions you ask yourself will determine your income. I mean, ultimately. So we're asking you, what's the one thing that you can do today to make money? But let's put put that a little deeper and say, what's the one thing you could do today to make the most money? And the most being important, because let's say you own a landscaping business, you've got 5 people out doing lawns. Well, you could get on a lawnmower tomorrow and start cutting lawns, but that wouldn't be the one thing that would make you the most money. It would be, how can I keep these 5 people busy all 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day, whatever that is. So when we're saying what's the one thing, we're actually saying to maximize your value, not just to bring money, but to maximize the amount of money.
Yeah. Well, you make a great example. Right there would be probably the best thing would be to keep some of your existing clients happy. Does that mean just lobbing a phone call into some of your clients, or does that mean making the rounds, right? Does that mean getting a new client? It could be getting a new client because it's a landscaper. They're going to get their lawn cut every week, right? So it could be getting a new client. So that's a great example. Keep my guys busy. Yes. How can I keep them busy? We'll keep the existing guys happy. Oh, I could get them a new client, right? So for your business, what's the one thing? But it also helps you cut through. They pitch it in the book as if like, that's what you should ask every morning when you wake up. And that's what you should ask about every task, like every phone call, every email. Does this help me progress my one thing today? Right.
Yeah, what's the one?
Eventually,
if you're writing a marketing message, if you're writing, I don't care what it is. So the one thing is, what's the one big thing, the one big breakthrough that your customer will have? We talk about like platitudes. We're just looking at some electrical contractor list, we'll just say, and on there I noticed one said, we've been in business 30 years. It was like way over in the, that's not what's the one thing that you solve for your clients that could bring you the maximum amount of business? That's where you get the marketing message. So this goes across your entire business into breaking it down. Like if you're in the if you have an Amazon company where you sell products through Amazon, what's the one thing that you can do that's going to make you sell more products on Amazon? What's one thing that you could do to enhance your shipping or customer retention or, all those things? That's the one thing we're talking about. That's what Gary Keller was talking about when he wrote the book, and Paul Papasan, if that's your name, Paul, that's what they're talking about in the one thing. So, right.
And it's interesting in that, it can be the one thing you need to do every day, or every day it can be the one thing I need to do today, right? So it can change. Like today, I'm a builder. I need to meet with the prospects or I need to meet with the people I'm building the house with and make them happy and feel warm and fuzzy that we're building the house, really not, really doing a good job. That's the one thing I need to do today, right? Tomorrow, there might be a different one thing. Hey, I really need to bond with this real estate agent who sends me referrals. That's my one thing I need to do tomorrow, right? So the one thing can change day to day, as opposed to, but there could be an overall thing, which I got to have more, keep existing clients happy. I got to get in front of new prospects, and I got to get in front of people that will send me referrals, right?
Yeah, and then you got to get in front of the banker and make him give you the money so you can keep all these other people. I mean, that's going to be your one thing at times. If you're going to be in any type of construction, you're going to be that's the one thing. Every day can be, like you said, you get 5 one things every day, and
you don't have one thing a day. No, you can have.
Well, no. I mean, one per day is where I was going. Sorry, per day. If I said that improperly, I write a lot better than I speak. But I think it was Dan Sullivan who talked about how you should never have more than 3, maybe 4 maximum things that you got to get done today. Well, this brings it down. If you're looking at 3 things you got to get done today, what's the one of those? Well,
that's what they were saying. They talked about this in the interview with the Jay guy and the Gary Keller was saying, they had Gary Keller's Keller Williams Real Estate. And so they coached the real estate agents is where this all came about. And they would tell them, okay, they have a weekly call, I think, I don't know, Fridays or Tuesday. And the idea would be, okay, what are the 2 or 3 things you need to do this next week, Dave, to kind of move forward or whatever. And they said invariably they would come back and they didn't do the one thing, they did the other 2 or 3 or 4 things that were just easy, but they really didn't do the one thing. So it was really out of frustration that Gary and Jay finally said, look, there's only one thing you need to do this next week, Dave. This is the one thing. That's all you're going to. And he said, when you started telling them just the one thing, the other 2, 3, 4 things got done in addition to that. but it was almost, if you gave them a choice of 3 or 4, they always chose the 3 or 4 that was easy, right? But not the one thing that was hard and the most important. So he said it came out of frustration where the 3 things, really I told you 1, and you'll probably end up getting 3 or 4 things. I just thought that was kind of funny.
And if you take, I don't know if he talks about it in the book or not, and I have read the book, or I listened to the audiobook several years ago. But what you're going to find is that one thing, the reason, if you're not doing it, the reason you're not doing it is there is some fear associated, whether that's, they might say no, they might believe it's too expensive. There's some fear.
I don't know how. Remember, who not how is what Dan Sullivan talks about. That's why you're not doing it. But that's like the Big Rocks. What's that Big Rocks book that you talk about?
Well, that's in my book, the Ultimate Time Miracle, or it's the 1 week time miracle. And I talk about big rock activities, which means you've got these big activities that you've got to get done, that big rock, and usually that is surrounded in some fear that it might not even be a conscious fear in many cases, but there is a fear that's why you're not doing it. So if you get really focused on, this is the thing I got to do, and you start doing that one thing at 8 in the morning when you get out of bed and it's done, you'll become, look, overcoming fear is a giant step in any entrepreneur's life.
Right.
And it's usually attached to the one thing.
It's usually just, well, we need to talk about this other. Donald Miller has a great book out called Business Made Simple. We'll talk about that. We'll do a podcast on that. I was listening to him this morning, and he was talking about his one thing is, apparently he writes. He's a writer, and that's his main content-driven type marketing is what he does. And he does that first, right? Gets up in the morning, exercises, meditates, journals, but he does his writing in the morning because his brain is the freshest then. And he holds the meetings towards the afternoon because you don't have to be as mentally sharp, he thinks, as he does to write. So what he was saying was, I get my one thing done early, and then the rest of the day, I get those other things done, and it's bonus. So I was just listening to him this morning talking about the one thing he needs to do is write or content or make a video. And he does that first thing in the morning, then everything else is gravy.
I can relate. I write in the morning as well. I mean, almost all my writing is done before noon, and then I can't write anymore usually.
Yeah. And then, and it's like, so like we watched Dean Jackson, I'm sorry, not Dean Jackson, but Dean Jackson was talking about procrastination. I think they have that podcast, Procrastination, The Joy of Procrastination. And I was saying, a lot of times you use procrastination to tell you what that one thing is, right? So whatever you're procrastinating might be the one thing you should be doing. And your brain's telling you through procrastination, hey, Dave, this is what you need to be doing. And then a lot of times the reason you are procrastinating, this is what they talk about, the who, not how. You don't know how to get started. And instead of how to get started, you need to think of who could help me do this? Who could help me get it done? Or at least who could get the ball rolling? So they have a whole podcast on maybe your big rock, you're procrastinating. Oh, so they wake up and say, what's the one thing I'm procrastinating today? Well, that's probably the most important thing because it's a nuisance in my brain, and my brain's telling me I'm procrastinating, which probably means it's important. So instead of figuring out how to do it, let me figure out who can do it for me today, and at least I'll get it off the plate and get the ball rolling.
That's actually a pretty good, procrastination is a, sometimes people procrastinate about procrastinating. Now, if you can do that, you'll be successful because I don't have time to procrastinate. So I'm not going to procrastinate right now. I'm going to get this done.
Yeah,
but I really want to procrastinate, but I don't have the time to, so I'm not going to procrastinate.
Right. Well, and now we were talking about that for myself. I had, we do this client surge meetings, right? And I'm so busy going client meeting to client meeting. Now it's Zoom, right? Zoom, that I didn't have time for any distractions. I didn't have time to screw around. I didn't have time to check the Facebook or to make a phone call or to check with the golf scores or my golf buddies, right? Because I was so busy, boom, boom, boom. Talks about people want to lose weight or get in shape, and we talked about that before. And I forget who it was, talking about working out in the morning. First thing in the morning, people have different, whatever. First thing in the morning, late at night, whatever. This guy was first thing in the morning, and he kept trying to figure out why he would procrastinate or not do it because he would come up with excuses. And I think I've told this story before because I used it myself. And it was, how do I eliminate the obstacles? So the first thing was lay out all your clothes beforehand. So then you can't wake up and say, oh, I got to go find my shoes that I want to work out. glasses. I wear glasses or contacts actually. So it's like, well, I'm going to work out with glasses and it gets sweat all over it if that's what I have to do. So I'm no longer going to use, I got to put my contacts in. It's like, no, darn it, you're going to work out with glasses on, right? And then because of that, I hate it so much that I do put my contacts in, so it's no longer an excuse. And then it was like, you got to put the clothes in the bathroom next to the sink so I don't have to go find them and search for them. So then it's like, I eliminated all my obstacles. So then it's like, all right, well, I'm awake, I might as well go. I think Tony Robbins talks about maybe take that first step. Maybe with him talks about if you want to, how do you learn to run? You take the first step, put on your tennis shoes and your workout clothes and go outside and take one step. And then it's like, well, once you take one step, you might as well go to the end of the driveway. You go to the end of the driveway, you might as well go to the end of the street. You go to the end of the street, you might as well go to the end of the block. Anyway, so it was almost just the progression of eliminating the obstacles.
There is, but then I would say then if you don't know how far you want to go, like if you're going to go out to exercise, you better know how far you want to go, because once you're a mile in, your body is going to start telling you to stop. And so,
right.
As a runner, and I know you used to be, I haven't been running as much because of my left knee, but as a runner, I like program in my app on my phone and, I'm going to do 5 miles a day so that I wouldn't stop, because that thing is telling you how long you get. And if you stop, it doesn't call you a jerk, but you feel like one. So part of
that's accountability, right?
Yeah, that is accountability, and that is knowing your why, because your one thing is about getting to your why. Yeah. And I mean, if we're really going deep on the why, or on your one thing, it's because you want to vacation 4 months a year, or it's because you want to buy a new house, or it's because you want to. There's a why underlying why you shouldn't procrastinate and why you got to overcome fear. There's always a underlying why. And if you're not clear on that, the one thing won't matter, because you got to get clear on the why so that you can focus in on the one thing you got to do to get to the why. Because that's what this is all about, right? I mean,
right.
I mean, our show, Profitability MD, is about using a business as a tool to build wealth so that you can have more time off, pay less tax, enjoy your life, make more money, all of those things. But if you don't know the why, making more money doesn't matter. I mean,
right. It can be, and we talk about that. So it's funny you mentioned that. So Tony Robbins, again, I think it's story, state, and strategy. So let's go back to, you want to lose weight, story, state, and strategy. We can go online and look up strategy, right? How to diet, how to exercise, how to run a marathon, right? There, we get the strategy right off of there. The state is get yourself all excited and pumped up and warmed up, right? And the story, though, is where he says you get held back the most, because you get stories hold yourself back. I'm big boned. I got injuries. My old football injuries are going to come out if I start exercising. Yeah, right? My knee hurts. And he was saying, but the story has to be, all right, there's somebody our age that's in fantastic shape, so it must be possible. Or the story is, I got to quit smoking because I want to walk my daughter down the aisle. I don't smoke. I'm just using that as I want to get in shape because I want to walk my daughter down the aisle, right? So you can have these, I want to make a lot of money so I can pay for my kid to go to college. I never went to college, right? So you can have this strong why. And your why could be, I want to make a bunch of money so I can give it to cancer research because my aunt died of breast cancer, right? That could be your why. And your why can change, right? You and I, we want to help 1,000 business owners find $100,000 in their business without spending $1 on advertising and marketing, because everybody needs help building a business, right? Mm-hmm. There's a good why, right? So the guys were talking about, whatever podcast I was listening to on the one thing, they were saying, if I had to build it down to 3 things, it would be find out what your why is, what's your purpose, what's your why, and it can change. Then he'd say, all right, then you got to figure out what is your one thing, what's the one thing you need to do, keep existing clients happy, get in front of prospects, what is your one thing you need to do today? And then they said you absolutely positively have to schedule the time on your calendar to do it, right? And so they were big proponents of, hey, schedule an hour. If you need to keep your existing clients happy, then schedule an hour at 10 o'clock in the morning, and you're going to make 1 phone call. And tomorrow maybe you'll make 2, and the next day maybe you'll make 3, right? Or if you need to call prospects, tomorrow at 10 o'clock, you're going to call 1 prospect. Maybe the next day, 2 close, 3. So they were saying, you got to have a why, what's your one thing? What is the one thing you're going to do that, that such by doing everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? And then 3, you got to time block it. You got to schedule it. You got to hold yourself accountable. That's
you know, it's funny. I was listening to a comedian talk about I'm going to go to the gym.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're scheduling the time, but it's already like 9 o'clock. And, you know, they got the day off. It's already 9 o'clock and I got lunch plans. So you got 3 hours before lunch. You got more than enough time. But in our minds, we create these false barriers. And that's why if it's on the calendar at 9, I talk a lot about, time, not time management, but utilizing your time. I get up 2 hours before I ever have to begin something. So if I have to be out of the house at, let's just say I got to be out of the house at 9 a.m., I'm going to get up 2 hours and a half before, because the half hours I got to shower and get ready. So I need 2.5 hours. My 2 hours gives me that cushion to eliminate all excuses. If I've got to do, so that's being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
If you'd like to read the news or you look on Twitter or whatever those things have, if you're inclined to do those things.
You built that in your plan.
You've got to build it in your plan, because if you don't, you'll plan to fail. I mean, the failure to have a clear, concise plan and knowing yourself, knowing your own procrastination triggers, if you will, put those on your calendar. All right. Give yourself, I talk about my elephant hours. I do the 44-16, 44 minutes of work, 16 minutes of procrastination, 44 minutes of work. It's not procrastination. I'm going to go get coffee or do whatever.
Right.
But that's again, planning for, like, some people do a lot better. They get to 50 minutes. I'm only going to take 10 off, or 55. I'll take 5 off, whatever your thing is. I can be very effective in 44 minutes. So can you. You're one of the most, I respect the way you manage time, or you control your time.
Well, it's funny. You're talking about that. So I have a thing of how many clients I need to call per week, right? Existing clients, keeping them happy. That's the best thing you can do. And so I've tried 10 different ways to do it, right? And it turns out for me, what works the best is, let's just say I got to call 10 people this week. I don't know the number, right? At first I would say, oh, just give me a list of the 10 people and I'll call them sometime throughout the week, right? And invariably that didn't work. I'd come up with some procrastination or reason, or forgot to look at the list, or yada, yada, yada. And then what came for me was, I need to put, those 2 people, 3 people per day on the calendar in a time slot. Right. That's how, for me, I couldn't just say, here are the 10 or 15 you got to call the week. Here are the 3 you call on Monday, here are the 3 you call on Tuesday. And then what I ended up doing with myself is gamification of it, right? They always talk about how to gamify it, which was, all right, well, if I called those 2, let me see if I can call tomorrow's people today. And then I'll free myself up. Oh, well, I call those guys. Why don't I call the people on Thursday, and then I'll have Thursday free. So then all of a sudden I find myself playing a game where I am making all the calls in a shorter period of time, because I freed up the rest of myself for the rest of the week. So that just works for me, as it would be, I had to write it on the calendar. It had to be on the calendar, otherwise it didn't get done. But then I find myself being competitive with myself. Oh, let me see how many I can get done in this 10-minute, 30-minute, 45-minute block.
But in both of us, we just said, look, we know we have these one things.
Yeah.
So if you're an entrepreneur and you're watching this, that's the thing, is you figure out yourself. And like you said, gamify it, okay, well, can I get all these things done today? Look, we all have the same amount of time in a day. So, but you ever notice some entrepreneurs just get so much done? It's because they know their why, and they understand the one thing that they have to do to make their why come true with the amount of time they're given. You can't say it any other way. It's just, you get it done because you want something, and you schedule the time to make it happen. Whatever amount of time it's going to take, you don't lie to yourself. We all do it. Let's be honest. We all do it.
Right. We all procrastinate. That was the whole point of that. Joy procrastinate. We all procrastinate.
Everybody.
Let's get over it. Use procrastination to our advantage. What am I procrastinating that I need to get done? Quit letting procrastination have a free ride, right? So that's good. We can kind of wrap this up. It just says, this was the one thing, Gary Keller, and we always butcher Jay Papas, something or other.
Papa-san, we'll call it.
All right. The one thing, what's the one thing you can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? That's the one thing question. And you need to have that as you got to have your own why. Then you got to have what's the one thing I need to do. And then you got to have a time schedule to do it. I got to do it today in a certain time zone. That might be your one thing you have to do for business. We talked about big picture. You got to keep existing clients happy. You got to get in front of new prospects. You got to meet with people that'll send you prospects, centers of influence, right? Your one thing might be, what are the one thing I need to do today, right? Keep this particular client happy. Keep this particular prospect, get them on the pipeline, right? So you could have the one thing for the day. What's the one thing I need to do today? What's the one thing I need to do for the week, right? So that you could have various timetables for your one thing. But the whole purpose of all this is your own accountability, your own intentionality of it, your own, what is it? There's another book called Essentialism, right? What's the essential thing that I need to do? What's the one thing that's essential to my success, right? That's same sister compatibility of this thing. So these are the kind of things we talk about in our mastermind group. The one thing, what's one thing you need to do? These are the things. The benefit of the mastermind group is you're bouncing these ideas off of other people who have done there, been that. So if you're interested in a mastermind group, we say you need three things. You need commitment, a roadmap, and a support system. We've got 2 out of the 3. We just need your commitment, right? So if you're interested in a mastermind group, talk to me and Dave. So Matt at profitabilitymd.com, Dave at profitabilitymd.com. This podcast, profitabilitymd.com, is our website where the podcast is. Podcasts wherever they're available. We have a great YouTube channel so you can see our pretty faces. Profitability MD on YouTube, which is pretty cool. But these are the kind of stuff we do. And so really, as he said earlier, it's the one thing, the people that make the best use of their time, they're doing their one thing every day. If you just took the next year and concentrated on your one thing a day, for a whole year, you can't help but be successful.
Perfectly said, Matt. Enjoy today's program.
Good stuff, man. All right, buddy. I'll see you.
All right, take care.